At the stroke of noon, she steamed away from Troon, the whirling paddles churning up the foam. To a Kentish man in the garden of England, for many years the Medway would be home. From Chatham down the Thames to Margate and Severn, each glory day she would ply her trade, bringing goods and joy to many a man and boy. But 39 per pay to all they played. The sturdy Medway Queen would have to play her part and sail the English Channel with a steely heart, sweeping up the mines and saving shipwrecked men, and bringing them back to old Blighty again. In the year of Foreshore, in Operation Diamond Road, the Medway Queen made 7 trips to hell, and bringing them back to old Blighty again. With the 60s in full swing, the Queen was the in thing, as a nightclub on the Isle of Wight. Just before she was forgotten, and when she became rotten, and no one seemed to care about her plight. But now some shiny knights have taken up the fight. On River Medway she drives a cozy berth, so soon will close past. They will tip their hats and pay respect to the Queen her real deserve, and say thank you to the girl who showed her worth.
The PS Medway Queen is a paddle-driven steamship, the only mobile estuary paddle steamer left in the United Kingdom. She was one of the little ships of Dunkirk, making a record of 7 trips and rescuing over 7,000 men in the evacuation of Dunkirk. The Medway Queen was launched on Wednesday the 23rd of April 1924 with a ship length of 179 foot. She was in service from 1924 and was then out of service in 1964. In the 1980s, the Medway Queen was just left to rot. Medway Queen was moored just outside the naval dockyard on the Isles of Wight and kept afloat by continuous water pumping. So let's go through the Medway Queen's timeline of history. In 1924, she was built in Troon in Scotland by the Owsley Yard for service on the River Medway and the Thames estuary. In 1925, she worked on the River Medway and the Thames estuary, part of the Queen Line fleet of the new Medway Steam Packet Company based at Rochester in Kent. In 1937, she attended the Coronation Review for King George VI at Spithead. In 1938, she was converted by Wallsend Engineering for coal to oil burning by Wallsend Engineering. In 1938, she carried children evacuated from Kent to East Anglia, joined by the Royal Navy, transformed into a minesweeper, serving for a duration of the war in the 10th Minesweeping Flotilla in the English Channel. In 1940, she became part of the flotilla of ships evacuating British Army soldiers from Dunkirk during Operation Dynamo. After making 7 trips, she rescued over 7,000 men, gaining for the ship's crew 7 awards and shot down 3 enemy aircrafts. At one time during the evacuation, she was overdue and was thought to have been lost with all hands and troops, but she eventually arrived back at Dover in Kent, ready to return to France in Dunkirk for more troops. The efforts of her ship and crew earned the paddle steamer the title of Heroine of Dunkirk. In 1953, she attended the Coronation Review for Queen Elizabeth II at Spithead. In 1963, taken out of service with the possibility of being broken up, but the Belgian Shipbreaker Company declined to break up the Heroine of Dunkirk. In 1964, she was sold and later opened as a nightclub on the Isles of Wight. In 1970s, she was replaced by a larger PS Ride and moved to the River Maiden, but sank when the hull sprang a leak. In 1984, she was raised from the bottom of the river as she sunk and was towed back to the River Medway on a pontoon by new owners. In year unknown, so between 1884 and 1886, she was abandoned and sank again, while moored against the wall at Chatham Dockyard. The new owners decided to use water pumps to get the water out, but Chatham Dockyard said they're not allowed their electricity to use the water pumps. So of course the new owners turned off the electricity, meaning there was no water pumps, and every high tide the Medway Queen would spring a leak and she would sink to the bottom of the River Medway. In 1887 she was raised once more from the bottom of the River Medway and moved to a creek in the Hoo Peninsula. In 2006 the National Lottery agreed on £1.8 million funding packages to the restore of the structure. Yet again in 2006, the hull was rebuilt. In 2011, the visitor centre opened at Gillingham Pier. In 2013, the new hull entered the River Medway at Sheerness in Kent under tow from Bristol on 18th of November 2013. And now we're in 2022 and she's nearly finished her restoration and she will soon hopefully be setting a sail. Now if you would like to see the Medway Queen, you are welcome to go to Gillingham Pier every Saturday between 11 AM and 4 PM to see her in her full glory with a tour around the ship. I'll leave all the details in the description if you're wanting to do that. I would fully recommend it. During the Medway Queen's voyage in the English Channel to Dunkirk, she was in the middle of the English Channel when she saw another paddle steamer full of troops and passengers coming back from Dunkirk back to England to be saved. That ship unfortunately hit a shipwreck, meaning she was sinking very quickly. The Medway Queen quickly turned around and put every passenger on that boat which was sinking onto her own boat, meaning she was very, very overloaded, meaning water was going over her paddles and she could sink at any time. But thankfully she didn't. She got all her passengers off safely back in England at Dover and Margate. Let's now jump into the Medway Queen paddle steamer herself and see what it's like inside.
Right down across there.
Yeah, should do.
Right, one engine. All yours.
Oh wow.
2 cylinders, high and low pressure cylinder, with a conrod on each, with a big crankshaft, see there. And this is the connecting, the crankshaft on the connecting rod going right through it, under our feet, out to the paddles there.
Oh, wow.
You can see the shaft going out, and that's what turns the paddles.
Wow.
And the paddles are what's called articulated. They don't just go in, dig in and come out, because when they come out they bring up 2 tons of water.
Yeah.
So they go in, dig in, and as they come out they feather. That's what all these connecting rods, they feather and just drop off 2 tons of water each time.
Wow.
Otherwise you'd have 2 or 3 tons at each side trying to be lifted up. Steering. The steam's made behind us. That little engine there is called the steering engine.
Yeah.
And it does that. And underneath you can see a great big wheel that drives with a chain wrapped around the wheel. And the chain comes under our feet again, under our feet to here, round a pulley and goes all the way aft each side and connects to the rudder and pulls like that. And that little engine there that does it all, that little tiny engine. And that pulls the rudder left or right on these chains that go disappear up to the aft.
Wow, it's got a good job.
This job here is a fan, and the idea of the fan is to keep the boiler room, if you come this way you see the boiler room, that's the boiler room.
Oh wow.
And what it does, it keeps that fully pressurised, so any smoke or steam that escapes is pushed up the chimney, because that is all pressurised.
Wow. It's a big room.
It is a big room, but it used to have very, very large boilers, because it used to run on coal initially, and then it was changed over to very, very thick, heavy, tarry oil. But you could never do that today.
Was that in the 30s?
In the 20s it was coal, in the 30s, yes, it was converted to heavy oil at the beginning of the war. And because it's such heavy oil, it used to have to be pumped through a heat exchange that heated the thick glutinous oil up, so it became thin enough to be able to pump it into the engine, where it was fired like a diesel engine.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, if you would come back on a nice day, perhaps on a Saturday, someone will take you around and show you exactly what you want to see. You know. But at the moment, if I might lead the way, what we're trying to do is to get one of the saloons up and running as a venue, someone where you could have a wedding or a drink or a dance.
Yeah.
And this is the forward saloon.
Oh wow.
We're trying to do.
I feel like I'm on the Titanic.
Let's hope it doesn't suck with the famed fate. There's no icebergs, is there?
I don't think so. Are we in first, second or third class?
Oh, crikey.
That's really nice in here.
So underneath us is another big venue.
Yeah.
But unfortunately it's shaped like that.
Oh, so it's small
So
now.
this is the big wide one. There's going to be some sort of restaurant, cookery under us. Towards the back, behind the bar down, that's where I say the chains truncate and pull the rudder backwards and forwards.
Oh, wow.
Under what's called the poop deck. That's sort of the interesting part of it, really. I could show you the anchor room.
Oh yeah, I would love to see that.
Once you get in there. That's the electrical cabinet.
Oh, wow.
A little room here just for making tea. It's going to be called the nappy.
The tea room.
The tea room, yeah, indeed. And this is another saloon at the forward end. This used to be the cheap end, because originally, when it was first built, none of this was here. This would all be open to the elements, front and back, and if it rained, it would just rain and come down the stairs and you'd swab it. but the posh end you've got a bit more comfort. Underneath us there were stairs going down to where the crew quarters, and the crew quarters was under us. I used to sleep on bunks and so on and so forth there. And here is where the anchor and the wine rooms would go.
Now I definitely feel like I'm on the Titanic.
Yes, now you do. And of course they would stick out there, the anchors, and they would be fastened to there. There's a locker under there for the excess chain that would drip down there. This here, as you go past, you'll see sticking up there is an auxiliary rudder. So you'd have a wheel up there, and it would pull these. This arm would go back and forward, pull these, which does exactly the same as we saw back down there. Because underneath us is what's called a bow rudder. So we haven't just got one on the stern, we've got one at the front, and the whole front of the vessel goes like that.
Wow.
And the reason for that is because there's no differential on the paddle wheels. So if you come along and you want to tuck in, you can't just get one going. They both got to go the same way. So you have to push the front in with a rudder and the back out with the stern. So as you go, you might be able to see the bow rudder.
Okay.
And that's what that does. That works the bow rudder.
Can I just get a shot out the window thing?
You can help yourself.
Thank you.
I'm surprised we were loading in, because normally we get the spirit of Captain Haddock right down in Dunkirk. Captain Haddock.
Interesting place in there.
Yeah, it is really, really interesting. An interesting vessel.
Yeah.
And another thing we want to try and get over, if you imagine you're sitting in or standing in a vessel now, and you think, well, look at this. Look at this. That's lovely, everything metal, steel, lovely, smashing. But bear in mind, in the war, during the Dunkirk landings, a rifle bullet would easily go through that. Easily, like that, not tin plate. Even though you and I think, no. Ping, and it'd be through. And there'd be up to 1,000 men per trip laying in here, the front, underneath on deck, just trying to get a bit of a respite, cup of tea, been rescued. 7 times she went over, 7 times. Now I'll take my hat off to the feet. Through minefields and goodness knows what all, 7 times to rescue 7,000 men.
It's a good ship.
And that's part of the story of the old girl.
An interesting one too.
Very nice in showing interest. I'll see if the office is open. You may well, if you wish. And off we come again. Careful, John, don't drop your stuff down the hole.
Can't get on.
I'll move that. Don't worry, I'll get a spanner and move it.
Don't fall off then, Ray. You know what you're like, mudlarking.
So be careful. A bit of 1940s music with ambience. I'll take you down below to the art salon first. Then the steps are fairly steep. I like to bring people down here because it gives them a good idea of how the ship was constructed. As my wife probably told you, this is a riveted ship, and what they do is you've got these rivets. They drill a hole, put the rivet in it, and then they squeeze. The rivet is white hot, and then it's squeezed together. You get this head on the other side, and then as the rivet cools, it contracts and it tightens everything up. But you can see, I mean, this is not something you'll see very often these days because ships are normally welded these days. But this ship is riveted, and it's actually a very good way of building a ship. An expensive way of doing it. Right, so, obviously gave light and ventilation to the galley. This is the cover for the forward stairway. This is the bridge. All this ironwork is original. The bridge opposite is where the captain would sail the ship from. Watertight service had two masts, one at the forward end and one there. That one was never put back because I think it was really only for wartime service. But there you can see the minesweeping gear. There's another photograph of it too. You can see how it. And there's the paddle.
Oh yeah. So low in the water.
Yes, it is. Yes. And what you've got to bear in mind is that the paddle steamers were built originally as passenger carrying vessels. But if you come back in a few weeks' time, sorry?
This is a little bird.
Yeah, there's a number. There's a parrot there, all my little friends. There's a rat and a mouse down there. Yes. And there's a duck over there. Yeah, I'm not on the Syrian.
Oh yeah.
All my little friends. The penguin over there. But yeah, this is the original engine. It hasn't been fully restored. They've done some work on it. But of course, until we get a new boiler to create the steam, you can't get it working. But we are looking at, getting it back to steam, and that would be lovely. This is the engineer station. The engineer would control the ship using those levers, as I explained before, and as you realise, the ship was steered from the bridge using the ship's wheel, but the engineer thirds the length of this. It's a huge thing. But unfortunately it had to be scrapped because it wasn't safe to use. But we will get another boiler, and in fact we may have to get a twin boiler rather than just a single boiler for safety reasons.
At the stroke of noon, she steamed away from Drew, the whirling paddles churning up the foam. to a Kentish man in the garden of England. For many years the Medway would be home. From Chatham down the Thames to Margate and Southend, each glory day she would ply her trade, bringing goods and joy to many a man and boy. But 39 per pay to all they played. The sturdy Medway Queen would have to play her part and sail the English Channel with a steely heart, sweeping up the mines and saving shipwrecked men and bringing them back to old Blighty again. In the year of sorrow, in Operation Diamond Road, the Medway Queen made 7 trips to hell. The trap hadn't worked, the Tommies were in Dunkirk. She saved 7,000 down the Brighton Bell. The Medway Queen had bravely played her part and sailed the English Channel with a steely heart, sweeping up the mines and saving shipwrecked men and bringing them back to old Blighty again. With the 60s in full swing, the Queen was the in thing as a nightclub on the Isle of Wight. Just before she was forgotten and when she became rotten, and no one seemed to care about her plight. But now some shiny knights have taken up the fight. The Medway, she tried to cozy bird. So soon will close past, they will tip their hats and pay respect to the Queen her real deserve, and say thank you to the girl who showed her worth.